Hello, welcome to Diploma Sports, an intelligent intersection of politics and sports. My name is SC, and I'm joined by my two good friends, Ghost and Steven. Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing tonight, man?
Good evening.
Glad to have you guys joining me again. There's a lot going on in the world, and first and foremost, today we are going to discuss the big game, the Super Bowl, the battle between the Cheaters and the Falcons, going over prop bets and fun facts to get you ready for this Sunday. Then we're going to jump into discussing Trump and many of the stories of the recent week and a half. It has been certainly a crazy couple of weeks. So we're going to discuss all of that. First, Ghost, why don't you tell everyone how to find us?
So, as you always know, we are on Twitter, Minds, Gab, and Facebook. You can catch us at our WordPress blog, where we will be actually posting an article very soon from our very own SC.
Woo!
And you find us any of those places, please tweet at us if we get something wrong. Tweet at us if there's topics you're interested in, and hopefully we just hope you're interested, right?
Yeah, exactly. We just, this is a very important time in history, and it's important to be involved, either politically or even just to watch sports, because sports are great too. We cater to both. So on that note, let's start with a lighter topic before we get into the heavy stuff. The Super Bowl is this Sunday. Features the Patriots, a 3-point favorite over the Atlanta Falcons, who have never won a Super Bowl, but who have a very interesting and unique chance to against the Patriots, who, despite losing their quarterback for the first 4 games of the season, managed to finish 14-2 and basically walked into the playoffs. Or walked into the Super Bowl, rather. They really didn't have too much of a challenge getting there. Little fun fact for you guys, and then I'll ask you guys some questions, see what you guys think. The team that wore white jerseys in the Super Bowl has won 14 of the last 15 Super Bowls. That is what New England is wearing this week. So take that for what it is. But my first question to you guys is, over under is it set at 59.5? Do you think that's too high or too low?
Well, personally, no. I think this game is there's a high variance. I think if it's a close game, this is going to be probably 40-point contest. I think if it's a blowout, this is going to be probably a 70-point contest. I don't like that bet at all.
Interesting. So you're of the mindset that when we discussed this earlier, Ghost, you had said that you assume the Patriots are going to win.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind. I watched the Patriots shut down effortlessly Antonio Brown. Don't get me wrong. Julio Jones is good, but is he better than Antonio Brown? Do you think he's better at getting open? I don't think so.
Maybe not, but I would say that Ben Roethlisberger did not look right in a lot of ways, and they lost Bell to it super early. So I mean, it's hard for me to judge the Patriots off that Steelers game, because the Steelers had 2 red zone chances to keep it close. They were turned away on both of those. I mean, trust me, it's the Patriots. I would say never good to get a bet against the Patriots. One interesting note, though, is how people are betting on this, because that's always important when you're kind of trying to figure out who to pick. At the beginning of the week, most of the public and most of the average fans just put money on New England. Obviously, you would think that, but the experts, or the people who bet professionally, were all laying money on the Falcons. So that's that for an interesting point. Taking the Falcons +3. So that means that, obviously, for those who don't understand betting terms, means that the Falcons could still lose by 2 points and you would still win. Obviously, given football and scoring, that doesn't happen very often, but you never know. Field goal means you get your money back. So that seems to be what people are taking. But yeah, Steven, do you have any comments on the Super Bowl? Any observations?
Yeah, well, I mean, my first question goes back to your original stat about the jerseys. And does white mean the home team? Does that signify something about the rankings?
To my knowledge, it does not necessarily, because the Pro Bowl doesn't count towards home field. It's a neutral field. I don't know why, like the Giants were wearing white when they beat the Patriots both times. I don't know why they were necessarily wearing white. Maybe it's a more popular thing.
Right. So I was just curious to know if, like, how are the jersey colors selected in Yeah, for the Super Bowl. I mean, because you assume that for every other game that the home team wears their colors and the visiting wears white, or the variation of like whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, just because if you look at like the Patriots in the undefeated season, obviously had the better record, and they weren't wearing white. But this year they have the better record, and they are wearing white. So I don't know, honestly. I don't know the origin of that, or how they decide. Maybe it's just decided at a coin flip or something. But nonetheless, that is a weird stat to keep in mind.
It is. And to the point about the
what?
Do the Panthers even have a white uniform?
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's just they have like a small little cuts in like their shoulders that is like the black and gray. Yeah, it's very simple. But to the wide receiver point that you're making about Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, they're different positions, isn't it? I mean, Antonio Brown plays on the outside more often than not, and Julio.
I don't think Julio's a slot.
I thought Julio
not necessarily slot, but I think what the point is, like, Antonio Brown gets a lot of yak, whereas Julio Jones catches 60-yard passes. It is a little bit different. I mean, they're both number one stretch receivers essentially, but they do have the way that you guard them is differently. And honestly, I think the ideal scenario for the Patriots is that Julio Jones gets like 8 to 10 catches, but only like 80 yards. They'll lose if he ends up getting 6 catches for 140 and 2 touchdowns. That's essentially the key to stopping them. But also, if Atlanta is able to run the ball, because I think New England's defense is kind of overrated personally. I get what you're saying as far as how they played the last couple weeks, but the numbers, even though they're the number one scoring defense, they only really played mediocre quarterbacks throughout the year. I mean, I should have gotten their list of the quarterbacks they played, but it's a lot of Brock Osweiler's and Matt Moore's on the list. So
they only had to play Matt Moore once.
Yeah, but they got to play. Who's the sad quarterbacks for the Jets? Fitzpatrick. They got to play. Alex Smith.
He's a smart kid.
Oh wait, no, they didn't play the Chiefs. But anyways, they got to play a bunch of just lackluster quarterbacks. Whereas honestly, I would say that Atlanta has proven itself and beaten more, good teams than the Patriots have. I mean, I'm nervous. I have more money on the Patriots.
Rodgers. Dak Prescott is good. I wouldn't put him down in the categories of like Matt Moore, but I think he's somewhere more in the middle of there. He's arriving. He's like above Dalton level, definitely.
Oh yeah, no. Well, he's mobile and he has a little bit of poise, and actually, like not Matt Ryan. Dak Prescott's come back a couple times. Why are you bringing up Dak though? I don't know.
Oh, you're saying like the quarterbacks that the Falcons had to go through.
Well, no, but the Falcons didn't have to play the Cowboys.
But
you're right. No, they didn't. Sorry.
SC's making a good point that to be honest, if you look at the schedule and the scores, none of the opposing teams against the Patriots had the offense efficiency of the Falcons and the togetherness that they have. They have, I think, such a good grip on who they are and what they're capable of doing. It's never been tested to this level, and I think that the Patriots have an unreal advantage of just being together in these tough moments. This is their 7th appearance.
Yeah, no, and that's
the other reason.
A very valid point. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I also love the fact that, I don't want the Patriots to win to some degree, but I kind of do, because if Tom Brady gets the MVP, I just want to see Roger Goodell shake his hand.
Oh yeah, that's must see TV. I'm rooting for that too. I'm rooting for the Patriots for that single reason. I mean, that is by far the best thing that could happen.
I just want to see what the memes are going to be.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the point that you made about the Patriots know what they're doing. Martellus Bennett was quoted as being like, I was so happy that everybody just seemed like they'd been there before. Because there's really only 2 people on the Patriots who haven't been to a Super Bowl already. And while Dan Quinn, the coach of the Falcons, has been to a couple Super Bowls, it's weird how many Super Bowls he's actually been in because he was the Seahawks defensive coordinator. Nobody else on that team. They're all going into these 2 weeks where they're in Houston. They're answering all these questions like media day, all that stuff. It's crazy. And that gives the Patriots, I think, a significant advantage because they're not going to be afraid in the first quarter.
They're not new.
Yeah.
Did you hear the Falcons what is it, offensive playbook went missing for half an hour during their
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan's backpack was misplaced.
their media session. Oh man, I gotta love it.
Oh, I was like, oh, come on, guys, not this obvious.
Yeah, no, I mean that has sketchy written all over it.
What do they
Also,
think they are,
too,
the Cardinals?
yeah, I mean, it's one other fun fact too that I heard. I've been saving these stats for this podcast. Is that the Falcons? I think have scored. I think I have this right. Have scored a touchdown on their opening drive on like 8 straight games, or at least have scored points on their opening drive. So like the Falcons get off to a strong start, and that's really the key for them. If they're up 14-10 at halftime, I would give the Falcons a legitimate shot. If they're down, obviously, 17-3, it's going to be tough for them to climb back.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I know that's probably the most obvious thing anybody could say, but, it's worth noting that the Falcons, I don't see how this game doesn't end like a 41-38 or a 37-35, something crazy like that. I took the over.
Is more likely.
I mean, I took the over because it's more fun to root for the over. I admit that it's a very high over. It's the highest in Super Bowl history. But if it's 21-17 at halftime, it's going to go over. They're just going to keep trading scores in the second half. So
I can see that still be a finishing score, depending on how well the Falcons' pass rush plays.
Well, a finishing score of really essentially 31-28 it loses. But anything above that. So if you get a 31-34 or 35-28, all of that would hit the over, which is 9 touchdowns essentially.
I don't know, man. It's
a little over 2 a quarter per team.
So is anyone think that the defense is going to step up in this game on either side? This isn't going to be a defensive match, is it?
I don't seem to think so, but maybe. The Patriots seem to be really good at doing that kind of stuff. And if Julio Jones drops a couple or they are not able to get their running game going, it could be a disaster for the Falcons if they get down early.
I could definitely see this being like a 3-score loss for the Falcons. Like I feel like that's a very likely scenario.
But that would never happen for the Patriots, so that's the whole thing. I've never seen the Patriots lose that way. Whoa, what was that?
Sorry about that.
Bill Belichick, unfortunately, is just such a defensive genius that I feel like he could hold the Falcons under 24.
I mean, I think it's possible. I think they could even beat them soundly, even if they hold them if they hold them to 30. Like they could still beat them 45-30 somehow.
Well, say he can hold them under 24, but that doesn't necessarily think I think they'll win.
Well, I think the Patriots will score at least 30.
Who would you say some of the X factors are that can change the game at this juncture?
I honestly have no idea with the Patriots.
I would say Dion Lewis.
What was the name that they used against the Steelers, who got 180 yards?
I mean, I picked Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis is without Gronk is the X factor on the Patriots. He's the guy that if he can get a couple out of the backfield and he misses a couple tackles, that changes everything. Because if he's hot, then they can't double Edelman or they can't double Amendola, anybody. They have to basically play on man coverage to account for the running backs. So I think it all comes down to if New England is able to run the ball, maybe they can hold them under 24.
Yeah, I think Dion Lewis will definitely be a spark plug, but I think the health of the Patriots offense, I think, will be dictated more by LeGarrette Blount. If LeGarrette Blount is getting stuffed at the line constantly, I think they're going to have a hard time moving the chains and going to have to rely on Tom Brady making throws that he may not be able to make as well before. But if LeGarrette Blount is breaking off, 5 or 6 yard runs with ease, this game is in the bag for them.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that assessment too. Okay, so my last question for you guys about this, and then we'll transition seamlessly over to politics. Are the Patriots? Do we, as a society? I'm not asking for necessarily your personal opinion because I know what you're going to say about this ghost. But are the Patriots heroes or villains? And let me kind of expand upon that a little bit. We really don't trust the league anymore. I mean, they've basically butchered the last bunch of major investigations they've had. The Adrian Peterson incident, they didn't really handle well. There was the Ray Rice incident, they obviously handled horribly. And then Deflategate.
Well, I think the Ray Rice incident is it's a little more gray than the Adrian Peterson thing.
Well, I mean, basically, Roger Goodell had seen the tape. The tape hadn't gotten released, and he only gave
The way that was completely fine.
and then he tried to levy it on him after the fact. Like, no, it was just a shit show of executive proportions. Like, Roger Goodell should have lost his job for that. If you see somebody getting punched in the face like that, and then you only give him 2 games, and you're willing to give a guy 4 games for smoking weed, there's something wrong with your priorities.
Proportionality. You're right on that. I mean, that's not an argument that you should. The argument you should lose in the real world.
I don't know. It's just like, and the owner's still back on it.
The domestic dispute, unfortunately, is a little more gray than most.
So basically, like, I'm looking at this as like, I think the Patriots are kind of, I don't necessarily trust Deflategate. I don't necessarily believe that, I believe it's possible that he deflated the footballs and that they were cheaters, but I don't have any.
No doubt he asked for them to be deflated. The question, that's against the rules, and they decided they were going to enforce it. I get that. Like, come on, there's no doubt. Like, he obviously must have hey, I like them, a little bit less inflated. Okay, like I'm pretty sure Tom Brady's probably dead guilty on that.
Yeah, but the game was still close when he had the deflated balls, and he got normal regulation balls and scored 4 touchdowns on them in the second half.
I'm not saying that changed the outcome of the game. Most quarterbacks, like, they have a certain amount of error they like just in general.
I just think it was absurd. They should have the league basically just dragged their best player through the mud for 2 straight years. And I think this is fitting revenge for that. I do. Like, he could have gotten the 4 games the first year, and then when a judge, held it, and the whole thing, I just think the whole thing was super shady. And I would be fine with seeing, for, the comical reason of seeing the Patriots win this weekend would be fantastic.
Let's see. I think that when you look at it, I mean, to call him a hero or a villain, there's no need to go to any extreme, and it's just, to me, simply, it's hard to trust them, the Patriots, as well as the league, to do the right thing. And I can't say that they're not, but I can't say with confidence that they are all the time. So when it comes to them being successful or the league taking action, every time I see success, it's like, did you guys do something? Like, a backpack got taken, so if the Patriots end up stuffing every single play of the Falcons, you're like, there's controversy, there's always a taste in my mouth that says that it doesn't leave you with sound confidence of what they're doing. And so that's how I look at it, being like, you guys need to take steps to rebuild trust. Stop trying to be wishy-washy and flow with the media or try to appease us, but find your morals and values, make them very clear, and follow them. There's no, if Roger Goodell is against marijuana, say he's against marijuana and say, I'm going to punish this the harshest possible punishment because, that's what I believe, and we can disagree with that. But with his wishy-washy attitude, you just don't know where he stands. It's like, this is... the wind's always changing directions, and so are you.
Well, and I mean, a problem too, just to piggyback off your point, ultimately Roger Goodell does not really get to make executive decisions. I mean, he's given that power by the owners, but ultimately the 32 billionaires who run the NFL are really the ones who determine his job security, and they were obviously fine with the way he handled the Ray Rice incident. They even voiced their support, Jerry Jones and the like. We can get into later how much I despise him, but that's another topic for another time. So I mean, honestly, a lot of this does rest on the owners, and I think we need to take a good hard look at them as well. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Obviously, they're neither give you a good taste in your mouth. The Patriots obviously got caught cheating once, but then proceeded to go on and almost have the undefeated season. It seems like they play well when they're angry, so that's why I'd be worried about them in this game.
Well, I view them kind of not as a hero or a villain, but more as like Boba Fett. As in, they're essentially villains, but they're really, really good at what they do. And there's people either really, really love them or hate them.
But I would never consider Boba Fett a villain. He's just a bounty hunter. He's just works for whoever's willing to pay him the most.
Yeah, that's my point. The Patriots are whatever you want them to be, essentially. Sometimes, usually though, they're the team, the mountain that must be summited. That some reason only Eli Manning and the Giants seem to be able to summit in the Super Bowl. Yeah, and once in a blue moon, Peyton Manning on life support. It's like they're whatever the league needs them to be. They're the team crushing and winning or losing, so Peyton Manning can go off and right into the sunset.
Yeah, exactly. All right, you guys want to see how I seamlessly segue this? I actually have a pretty brilliant way to segue this.
I'm curious.
All right, so and my main point now is that the Patriots are America's team, because we are winners, and the Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in 20 years, so they don't get to be America's team anymore. It's the Patriots; they've won. Someone else who's been doing a lot of winning lately is Donald Trump. So with that winning, a lot of people are losing sleep at night, and a lot of people are rejoicing. We're obviously in a very contested climate of a country. So transitioning seamlessly, let's discuss a little bit of this, and I'll kind of go over my reservations, and you can tell me if I'm just being over dramatic or out of line, or if I'm being misguided, et cetera, et cetera. And let's just go through these issues. First, I know you want to talk about the Berkeley incident, so Ghost, why don't you start with your overall opinion, and we'll go from there.
So just to talk about a current event that happened recently, one of my favorite speakers, and probably my favorite conservative speaker that I know of, Milo Yiannopoulos, went to UC Berkeley to give a speech to students about federal funding of sanctuary cities. Now, Milo Yiannopoulos announced the event in advance. UC Berkeley was very cooperative in helping set up the event. In fact, they invited him to the event.
Weird,
Now,
but yeah.
Now, as is any Milo event, by the way, I've gone to one and I had a blast. Unfortunately, there was not enough seats for me to get in, and the 1,000 people I went with were not all of us were able to get in because we were delegated to a smaller room by the staff at UCI. But as always, he's greeted by a bunch of protesters, and as we've all become acquainted with in the last few weeks, these protesters that call themselves Antifa, which is short for anti-fascist, which I think this is amazing what Winston Churchill said, I think 50 years ago, where he said, when fascism returns, they will call themselves anti-fascists. I just think that this is an incredible amount of just mind-blowing awesomeness. And so these Antifa protesters, they clad themselves with a balaclava. They cover their faces so that they can escape consequences. The police put up barricades, and basically they were just on a second story with, riot gear. Now, the protesters didn't care that there were police. They took down the barricades, which was the least bad action they did. They set fires to, I believe, like a camera tower of some kind. There's a great shot of it on fire with Milo crossed out on it. They attacked ATM machines with axes. They broke windows at the auditorium he planned to speak in, and eventually the police had to escort him off the premise. So, I'm curious to get your guys' take on this.
All right, Steven, I have a number of points. Do you want to go first?
I read a little bit about it, the event, but I'm not too familiar. I mean, my whole thing with protesting and anger is that with good intent, a group will be formed, and once it hits mass, that evolves into its own being. So with protesting, to hear, it's really sad to hear the damage done. But I wonder if that was the original intent of the protesters, or those were people who might have had that feeling and expressed it the wrong way. So I'm not saying, what they did is appropriate, but I do look at how critical masses of people can easily turn out of hand. Contrary, there was the Women's March, and that was really peaceful. That didn't turn out of hand. So it's totally possible. So to me, I always look at, what are the social factors that really triggered destruction versus meaningful action?
Well, let's also be clear about the Women's March was mostly peaceful. Now, the parallel Antifa demonstrations that were also happening on that day were often ending in violence and property damage and various vandalism.
Well,
those are two separate movements. Okay.
I don't know. Wait, let me clarify my point in that, because my whole thing is with movements and with large groups of people, there's a lot of, it could easily turn negative. So with these examples, with these two movements happening today, and actually in the Bay Area this last week, one of them was extremely peaceful, the other one wasn't. So my question, and what I like to ask, is what triggers the violence?
Oh,
What is that factor, and what about the, is there an underlying theme across all the movements?
No, this is a
Trigger
very
point.
easy thing for me.
Is there any trigger points we can identify to this, or is it just like lightning that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
let me explain why they're violent, because it's so simple to explain. The world is an internet comment section, right? Now, the women's protesters, they don't cover their faces. They're wearing hats, and you can see their faces. They know that people can see who they are. And yeah, some of them say and do stupid things, but they're not breaking laws because they know there's consequences if their face is identified, and we kind of, everyone with a phone has a camera. Now, the people covering their faces, I think most of them are looking to cause trouble. And at Berkeley, in the case of Berkeley, the police were not actively involved in arresting him. I don't know if anyone got arrested for what happened there. But they cover their faces because they have anonymity and they can protect themselves. And just like an internet comment section where people troll people, they say horrible things about people. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun with shit posting in that ilk. But when you have people in real life doing it that are pent up anger against the fact that their leftist ideas lost in November, they come here and they say, I'm going to cause a bunch of crap. I'm going to go and trash things and all this, which I never understand. Like, they attack a Starbucks. What did Starbucks do? I mean, Starbucks is trying to hire refugees instead of unemployed young black people. I mean, what do they hate them so much for?
All right. So you've said a fair amount. I'm going to address a few of these points now. All right. So going back to Stephen's point, I think it might be something as simple as these are college kids. Like, these are people who maybe didn't really study the MLK movement. I think what's missing in a lot of ways is leadership. There isn't a lot of, if you look at like the Women's March, for example, there was strong leadership there. It was organized. It was understood what was going on. Whereas with this Berkeley situation, it was kind of spur of the moment. And obviously these bad seeds, and obviously we condemn violence. It's never the answer. And like you said, Stephen, I'm saddened by that. I'm not happy that it resulted this way. But the one thing I do want to push back about this whole situation is honestly, we're in this climate now. I wouldn't say solely because of the right. The left is certainly to blame for a lot of its visceral hatred as well. Really, we're just in a very contested, very sort of mean-spirited country as far as our politics are concerned. But I mean, Milo has said some very outlandish things, and I know it is his right to say that. But like I explained in our pre-conversation, while it's not justified, if you walk into a Cowboys game and you're wearing an Eagles jersey and you start yelling profanity about Cowboys fans, and there's drinking involved, and they're young and people are immature and people are caught up in their emotions, like, fights break out, violence happens. Like, we're human beings, we're essentially animalistic at a core. We protect ourselves, we protect our ideologies, our beliefs, and obviously then violence erupts. So it's not that he deserved it or that he's asking for it, but if you're at one of these rallies and you're shouting, things like the KKK, like that one white supremacist that was punched, like, are you an idiot? Like, what do you think was going to happen? Well, let
me give you some pushback in a sec.
Well, no, and I think that trolling, like, in its place, like you said, that trolling can be fun, but that Quebec shooter was an internet troll. So yeah, you're ultimately right, Ghost, is when it goes out of the internet and becomes escalated in real life, that is really troublesome. And
he's also a feminist. I just want to be clear.
Well, but either way, I don't really care about his identity. But nonetheless, his anger manifested itself in real life, and that's really dangerous. And I think that's why, going back to Trump, why a lot of this, he set the tone of this climate. His inauguration speech was, everybody's terrible, and I'm the answer. Like, he's treating himself like it's an us versus them thing, and that's what this is becoming. It's literally becoming a war. And obviously, we don't want it to escalate to that point, but our president, our leader, is not setting the proper tone.
Wait, I want to push back against your analogy first. Your analogy of like walking into a Cowboy stadium with an Eagles jersey.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Why is that an incorrect analogy?
The Milo events are not rallies. They're not open air. They have a limited seating space, and often it's people who are fans of him that come and sit there. And yes, there are protesters who come to yell and scream about their causes at his events. But it's not like he's like at a microphone talking to a huge audience. No, he's in an auditorium, an enclosed space generally.
Well, and no one is
required to listen to him speak. And
and it should not have escalated to that violent point. Like,
But
we can all
that's why
be in agreement.
this is his stadium. These are his fans that are there. They're
Yeah, but
there.
I mean, honestly,
they're always peaceful, and they're there to listen to him talk about his opinions. He's not like going to a campus and saying, "No, you have to listen to me talk." He's going there. He's giving his opinion. It's completely different. It's like walking into a home stadium and getting punched by someone who's there.
What we guys are both talking about, in my mind, is just simple respect of how people just their own freedoms and how you communicate with them. And you know, back to the point of the leadership, Donald Trump has been not leading the best example of how to show respect. And you know, he demands something, and you know, he'll act for the norms, but when the shoe's on his foot, he doesn't play by that. And that's trickled into every day about how, you know, internet, like you say, internet trolls are coming to life, because that's kind of what a lot of people think Donald Trump is. You know, an internet troll became president. You know, there's so many jokes about that, but you know,
yeah, he's emboldening them essentially. Like, now these people are justified and verified in their actions.
Yeah, we're losing. You know, and back to like even your analogy, SC, about, you know, the Eagles fans and the Dallas fans. Like, you guys, you know, when you go to a game, we could be trash talking all day and get real drunk, but you know, at the end of it, still recognize it's a match, and be yelling equally as mad in each other's faces, you know, at each other's throats, but no violence, because we have respect for each other at a basic level, and there's a societal understanding of where respect is. And to me, right now, the leadership from top down isn't defining where that level should be, and that's causing a lot of problems in our communication and how we treat.
I don't think the leadership is what communicates what level of respect you have. I think it's your parents and your upbringing. Yes,
you know, that does influence you, and that should be your main educator. But when you see things today, I'm sorry, but when Donald Trump is using Twitter as the main diplomatic channel in communication with Mexico, like, or what he's doing to the media, and just how he's, or the Senate, the Supreme Court appointment, you know, and just like, and what the Republicans are asking for the Democrats, and just like the flip flop of like where the line of respect is and what you're supposed to.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, well, it's not about Twitter. Just keep in mind of how he was toward the respect that he showed towards President Obama, the respect that he showed in his inaugurations. Your inauguration speech is supposed to be unifying. It's supposed to be a speech about, you know, we're going to come together. We had a hard campaign. You know, like it's for example, if Mitt Romney was elected in 2012, like Obama fans, supporters would be very angry, yes, but it wouldn't be this same kind of visceral outlash, because Mitt Romney wouldn't be up there saying, "Oh, liberals have been ruining this country for years." He would say, you know, we need.
They have.
No, but that's not the point. You might actually think that, but a leader needs to not just be a Twitter troll. A leader needs to stand up there and say, we need to be unified as a country. I want Democrats on my side. We need to come forward and find compromise. That is a democracy. It's not about, I believe this and I'm the demagogue and I'm in charge. Like, this is why.
He doesn't have to compromise. The voters chose to give.
No, they didn't. He lost the 3 million votes.
The majority in both houses. He does not have to get your party's approval.
Yes, he does, because it's a democracy, because the majority of the country did not vote for him. He did not get a mandate. He did not receive a mandate from the American people. He does not have the right to just
did not receive a mandate from California, but the rest of the country did receive a mandate.
No, he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes.
By 4 million in California, and that is 1.2 million.
He lost it across the country. There's no actual
4 million deficit in California alone.
Well, I'm just saying, basically, he did not get a mandate. He is acting like somebody who got 80% of the vote.
Other 49 states. If you take California out of that equation, he has a mandate.
Well, yeah, but that's obviously, yeah, okay. Just take the penis out of the equation. Like, I mean,
he's the president. Like to me, that debating about who he represents and how much, and you could say, yeah, 3 million people voted for Hillary, sure, but right now Donald Trump is representing everyone, and again, it just goes like back to, it's not even just his actions, but just the decay in the ability to debate opposing viewpoints in America, and just the way we, again, communicate.
You're going to lay that at the feet of Donald Trump. You're gonna.
I'm not laying it on Donald Trump. I'm saying
trying to fundamentally change the healthcare system. He's like, look at this grandma who can't get healthcare. I'm gonna shove this in the face of the media for hours straight. I'm gonna lie about my mother not being able to get healthcare to pass my horrible healthcare law. That's a giveaway to insurance companies.
Yeah, but see, Ghost, that's a political point that you can make, and that's fine. But just then blanketly saying all of these things, that's the problem with the contentiousness of the politics. Like, you're making it sound like, oh, Obama, is killing blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not about that. Like, Obama made pragmatic choices when he had to. He took cuts when he had to. He was a voice for everybody. He wasn't just a voice for his supporters.
Let's stabilize Syria. Let's make there be more terror in the world.
But you can disagree with his decisions. You can say that Trump's going to be good decisions, but there still is a baseline of respect that should be bestowed upon the other party, because we both control power every once in a while. It's just like Ronald Reagan. I don't agree with a lot of his policies, but he was civil.
Are we going to give any credit to the way the Democratic Party has acted?
No, the Democratic
issues though.
Parties is not blame, but they're not president right now. This isn't about them. This is about Donald Trump and his image.
No, but you're saying how he treats them, and I'm saying have they treated him properly?
Well, look how they treated Obama. I think that it was far worse how they treated Obama. They didn't even think Obama was a citizen. They kept saying Obama wasn't a citizen because he was black. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay, Obama was the original birther. He's the one who said he was born in Kenya in his autobiography. Okay.
But how the Democrats treat Trump, to me, is kind of very. There's a lot of angles to it. One, a lot of folks are like, well, we're going to pull what you did to Obama on that's one side. Another side looks at it and says, well, if Trump does something good, let's run with it, because if we can do something, it's the first time in 8 years we can do something, 9 years now. But at the same time, the way Trump operates, again, I'm not talking about his policies and what exactly he's trying to do, but in just his mannerisms and his operations aren't, to me, there's no standard. He's not setting a standard. At one, he can switch and act professional, and then he can act, making rash points on Twitter. So that's where I get at being like, I look at the area of concern and saying, well, if we approve, his actions, and we start to normalize his ability to, change the leveling of professionalism we work upon.
Yeah, like for example, at the prayer breakfast this morning, he spent the prayer breakfast, which is supposed to be a nonchalant, he's just added as he's president. It's just a normal, they do it. He made fun of Arnold Schwarzenegger's Apprentice ratings. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, one, he should not be running a show while being president. One, he shouldn't be running any of these companies. When we'll get into that in a second, how this is all ridiculous. That with a businessman, there's obviously some gray area here as far as like the legality of it. But nonetheless, it's just present yourself in a different way. He's bragging and being disrespectful to Australia's government. He is saying he's saying we're going to invade Mexico. We're going to send our troops in because of their bad hombres.
No, he was talking about dealing with the cartels. He was not
by invading Mexico
and taking their territory. Come on,
we're not taking their territory. But we Mexican troops in a soverein nation like that. Well, that's not a precedent.
Just like in the Middle East, we do all the time.
But for the Mexico part, like, how the diplomatic relationships you build.
I think Mexico has treated us very poorly. They're not assisting us with controlling their border at all.
It doesn't matter how
coming from the south. They're spending $50 million to keep their people out of their country. Let me ask you
something. If you had a dispute with your neighbor, are you going to talk to them, over the picket fence between your yards, or go knock on their door? You're going to have that argument in the middle of like a supermarket or a public square, so that's again what
had their dog shitting on my lawn.
Going back to the communication,
did not work with me. Yeah, I would leverage all the power I could.
No, Donald Trump. See, the thing is, Donald Trump actually could have spoken to Mexico about the wall, and how he could have done that is saying, going through the back channels and not making it so public. But what he did, Donald Trump tweeted to the president of Mexico, if you're not going to talk about it, you're not saying talk about it, not going to pay for it, just flat out ultimatum, don't show up. Right? And so the Mexican president just tweeted back, said, okay, meeting canceled. My decision to cancel this meeting because Mexico has decided not to pay for the wall.
Yeah.
That feeling. So to the great negotiator, it's like, I hadn't even chance. What do you have? What
fraud?
you're going to
The
destroy
Mexican economy doesn't work without us. The Mexican economy cannot work without us. I mean, we have so much leverage over them. This isn't even a discussion.
Yeah, but again, you are focusing too much on the minutia of it and not on the broader point. England, the Parliament in the United Kingdom was debating whether to ban Trump from the country. The world is laughing at us. We're not displaying any leadership.
I've seen the charts where those votes are. Basically, all the Remainers voted for that. And
I'm not saying it's actually going to happen, but the point is that there's even having a discussion.
It's a class thing. The upper
So for
class.
some reason, Republican presidents lower our standing in the world. They don't raise it, and we need the world to think highly of us.
We don't need the world to respect us.
So let's say we stop trading with Mexico. Great. We've I don't say angered. We've annoyed Australia. We've
You act like
gone to China and we said we're using the one China policy as a bargaining chip, which is not even a question for China. So all of these wonderful things we're deciding to constantly do. Europe has mixed feelings about us, and it's causing more of the in that case, the leftists or the populist movement to take flight.
Good.
So Europe could be actually changing more towards America's, Trumpisms. So, but when you look at it, we're really frustrating all of our trading partners and all of our main allies. So it's like, yeah, we can shut down Mexico, but if China decides to
of course, we're not pissing them off because God forbid them off.
But China, there's no question to me that Taiwan has a right to exist, and Taiwan, we should call them a sovereign nation. We shouldn't do this nonsense.
The concept, but if China, my whole point is, if China decides to put economic consequences, or do something to play favoritism, publicly or not, and they don't do a lot of things publicly, and we decide to, just disrupt relationships with Mexico, we as U.S. consumers can be in a lot of trouble at times if people start playing trade wars and trade agreement disputes. That can have a huge change on all the goods we get from China and Mexico.
Yes, but you don't go into
imports and exports.
You don't go into that trade war until you reduce the cost of producing goods in America by getting rid of wasteful regulations and getting rid of wasteful labor laws. The second you make us more and more, every time you make us more competitive with China, the more you reduce their leverage over us, the more you're able to harm their control over us.
All right. Well, I think this is an interesting time to segue into one of my other main concerns, and this is also kind of this deals kind of with the whole aspect of a businessman is now president. I mean, this is the first time we've done this. This is obviously uncharted territory. My biggest concern is that Donald Trump has a large amounts of debt owed to the Bank of China. There's already been moments where
the United States has an absurd amount of debt owed.
Well, no, but Donald Trump as a person, as a businessman, it's a lot different if a person personally has all this debt. In China, also, there have been moments where people, ambassadors or diplomats have changed the reservations to stay at Trump's hotel instead of at a hotel that they were supposed to stay at. This is a clear conflict of interest, and it actually is illegal. So explain to me how all of these conflicts of interest are not going to get him impeached in the next 6 months, because ultimately, I think eventually Republicans are going to let him take the fall for a lot of these issues. They're going to let him kind of take the bullet for immigration and Supreme Court nominations. And then ultimately they're going to try to install Mike Pence into power. Obviously, that's a pretty loaded question. I was just focused on the first part. Why should I not be concerned about this conflict of interest, Ghost?
Well, you absolutely should be concerned about this conflict of interest. It's definitely a very rational thing to be concerned about. Now, I don't know the size of his debt to the Chinese government.
It's in the like several millions. It's not.
So he's a billionaire. That's 1/1000th of his net worth. Probably at most.
It might be more than that, though. I'm saying
at most it's less than 1% of his net worth. It's a small amount of his business empire. He has holdings all around the world. It's diversified well. So as far as like, if he had like half his debt in China, oh yeah, no, I would absolutely.
But he's got businesses all over the world, like you said. How can we be sure that he's not like, for example, if it comes, there's just a broad range of hypotheticals, but how do we know that he's going to make the decisions that he needs to make for the best interest of America and not for the best interest of his business, because he didn't actually give into a blind trust. You can't say it's a blind trust if you give it to your kids. It's just not a blind trust. It's fundamentally not.
See, I think that again, it goes back to like some of the sports feelings that, like the NFL and its wholesome, like Donald Trump's administration doesn't give trust, doesn't give you like, it doesn't make me go to sleep and be like, oh, I'm confident of what they told me today. I'm confident of what is being shared. So with that in mind, everything's tinted. And so that's the way I look at it, being like, I just can't fully trust you in any decisions, regardless of where you want to go.
Yeah, and I think he's had a lot of, like, Betsy DeVos for education secretary is basically just a favor, because she has been a longtime friend and donor of said Donald Trump and his endeavors and whatnot. And that's, I mean, how's that not crony capitalism? How's that not the thing that we were trying to destroy the most? I mean, that's my big problem with this is he was supposedly going to drain the swamp, and now we have the richest cabinet in U.S. history. We are going to all of a sudden have all of these people in these positions that they're basically going to undermine. Let's put the head of Carl's Jr. in charge of food. Let's put a guy who blatantly said. Let's take Jeff Sessions, who said that the KKK is all right, minus the fact that they smoke weed.
Okay. I know what you're referencing. Unfortunately, I had a video explain to me the context for that joke. The joke was...
What context?
Listen, he actively prosecuted and took down several white supremacists. He made sure they got the death sentence. He actively made sure they got the death sentence. And as a joke to a very disproven accuser... But yes, he did admit that he said the joke, and he said the joke was, well, I thought the KKK, I didn't think the KKK was so bad until I knew they smoked weed. Okay.
All right. Well, minus the joke aside, he opposed the Civil Rights Act. He's generally not been on the side of.
I just want to be clear. The Civil Rights Act. What is the Civil Rights Act? Is that the one that says you cannot discriminate on the basis?
Oh, the one that was just stripped by the United States Constitution, or the Supreme Court for some reason.
Oh, you mean the extra voters' rights protections, right? That they put in an amendment, right?
Yeah, and since then, minority participation in elections is dropped. Mere coincidence.
Actually, minority participation in this election was higher than last time.
Well, percentage-wise, though, I mean, obviously there's more people. I mean, generally speaking, minority participation since the hacking of the civil rights era in areas that actually matter politically has dropped.
I don't know. I think voter ID actually increased the black turnout in the areas that it was implemented, actually.
I mean, that doesn't sound like that's possible, but I don't have the numbers in front of me, so let's just.
I don't have it in front of me either, but I've heard from Ben Shapiro that it increased turnout in some of those areas. I generally trust him on that issue.
All right. Well, speaking of heard, let's continue our general topic about. You see how I'm segueing great today, you guys. I've really got this segue down. So let's and this all still kind of falls under the general mold. I had more specific attacks on Trump, but I think our general conversation about leadership and sort of our face in the world, I think is one that we should stick with, and I think that has to do with, let's discuss the media, because ultimately how we receive the news. I mean, in order to have a democracy, we need to make sure that. One, that we have an informed citizenry, so that when Donald Trump does do things that are crazy, we have the means to know what he's doing. We need to have that. It's protected by the Constitution. And I think going back to the general point, I don't feel like Donald Trump respects the right of the media. I think he just wants his propaganda machine, Breitbart, and then that's it. And I'm just very uneasy about the state of journalism in general, both in sports and in political coverage. I mean, this isn't just because of Trump. This has been happening really since, I would say, 9/11. But really, the state of the media is very frightening, because we really need to be able to check our government. And since the Iraq War, we've just been lied to and fooled, and our media is just incompetent. So I guess I'll just start there.
Okay, I mean, I wish our media was more proactive during the Obama years instead of acting like a propaganda machine.
Well, and the Bush years too, though. Let's not make this like
don't get me wrong. I'm very, very critical of the Bush administration. I think the media did a terrible job during that time when they should have been prosecuting his botched wars, and they should have been more actively
Yeah, and I know one thing that you're going to say, so let's just cut this off right now. The whole concept of the left and the media favoring the left. I just want to address that real quick because the media is run by basically 5 major corporations. So yeah, I'll agree with you that they certainly were more in Hillary's camp. That's undeniable.
97% donations to Hillary Clinton.
Okay, but but Hillary Clinton was not a leftist per se. She is very pro-corporate.
She's very much a leftist. She's not She's not like a liberal.
Okay, well, I don't want to get bogged down with titles, but basically, she's considered generally middle of the road. She's going to help corporations. She's not going to obviously instigate socialism.
Democrat. I will concede that to you.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah, exactly, and that's in reality. Like if you look at how the media reported on Bernie Sanders and even how they reported on Trump. The media was obviously incompetent in this election, and there's no denying that. But I think
Bernie Sanders would have lost 40 plus states, is my guarantee.
Well, either way, we don't need to discuss Bernie. The point is basically I think it's incorrect, or it's at least incomplete to say that the media is strictly leftist bound. I think that they're just
they're corporatist leftists as well. They're the same camp as Hillary Clinton. They're not progressive.
But that's not necessarily that doesn't mean that they're advocating for my views. That I'm still not getting.
They will use progressive leftists for their own gains, but they are definitely more corporatist leftists.
But it should be objective. That's the whole point too. Is there shouldn't be any leaning to it. It should be these are the facts. Make up your own damn mind.
See, what interests me is now over the years, the media has lost its identity, and I think it goes with the lost identity of our democracy and our political structure and a lot of other things. And to me, specifically on the media, when you talk about the lost identity, saying, what are they doing and who are they catering to? I think that there are a lot of good research that points to basically saying that, like, no one goes to mainstream media anymore. No young people use mainstream media as their main form of information. And so saying that, when you look at like, okay, then what is mainstream media doing and who are they catering to? They're catering to the old folks that was built off of Fox Network, and the man is forgetting the gentleman who just got kicked out of Fox last year, who created it all and basically made media.
Oh no, he died.
He made the media drama.
His name is drawing a blank for me right now too, but we all know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Murdoch.
Yes, no, not Murdoch. Murdoch's still in charge. The guy that was groping what's her face, Megyn Kelly.
Is that Rupert Murdoch or allegedly? No. But
no, it's the brainchild. Rupert Murdoch's the money. It's the brain guy. But either way, that's off topic. We all know who that guy is. We just can't think of his name right now.
So I see the media, the current media right now. The people in the White House. Saying that like, oh, well, we're currently out of our system, which was to report, hot topics that really had no substance. And now Donald Trump's Twitter account is the media's. That he is their output. And so with tweets, he's taken away all the articles, all of the gossip, all the readership. So I look at it and I say, well, what are you guys going to do now that the system you currently were thriving in has completely changed, and technology is really, changing the landscape upon which you communicate. So not only is you find content, but how you deliver it. So this identity crisis is hitting them really hard, and they're not having, Trump's not giving them any benefit either, or easy way to saying, oh, hey, here's the truthful information. Go tell the people.
Well, I want to just be clear that the media has much more structural problems than that Trump will report his policies before giving it to them. Here's the thing. He's under no obligation to give them what he's going to do ahead of time. I mean, their job is to report factually on what he does and says. And as long as they have access to the documents that he's passing, which I believe they do, they have access to most of the full text of what he's doing, then they can report on it fairly. Now, granted, are they going to be able to do it right away? No, they just have to, they should spend time, get an article out and go, okay, yeah, here's what Donald Trump said. Here's what it is. Here's where you can go over line by line, do old-fashioned journalism. They can still do that.
But the problem is, you can't trust the press secretary. How can you say confidently that I can trust anything the press secretary says? He's already gotten caught lying like several times already.
Which one?
But see, the press secretary has always, I mean, but they've become so accustomed to sitting in that area and delivering the news, and I completely agree. Them getting ousted, might actually make them reform the structural problems I'm saying that about their identity, and going back to the basics of like, don't go to the head, go to make friends with all the paper pushers and all the people in all the departments and get the real scoop of what's going on, and get the inner workings and get back to the real lifeline, what is it, the veins of our political system instead of the mouth. Because they've come so accustomed just sitting there and sitting right from the mouth, and whatever it says, they're just, you can hear it loud and clear. But if they're in, again, the veins and with the working people of our democracy, that's where the real information will come. And that's where when the mouth says something, you're like, well, no, we've actually talked to some people, and that's not what they say. That's not what, leaked papers say. That's not what we've come to, anonymous sources say. So that's the kind of thing that I think, Ghost, I hope that's a structural change I hope they'll make.
Well, I wasn't necessarily. I mean, that is a thing for them. I want them to reform and be more active and more combative, like they were during the Bush years, on certain things. Absolutely, the more they completely drop the ball and unforgivably. But what I was saying was the way the industry works, the way of producing news today, is that. The point I was getting is that constant immediacy, or like right away, getting that report out, like the second something happens or within an hour of it happening, is so key to monetizing that news. And if you get it out late, you're going to have such a reduced view count. And one of the problems is that they like the old system because before the news was even announced, they already had the report written up, so they could monetize it best. The problem is now they cannot do the full accurate work and scope of their job if he doesn't just give them the information and they're just reporting on it in real time. And they don't want to have to compete with you, me, and everyday bloggers to report on this. That's the thing. They liked that they had kind of their hierarchy, like, we're CNN, we get access to all this before you because we're special and we're respected, and therefore we deserve to get this ahead of time. That's the problem, is that the world has changed. They can't. Their model cannot compete in a modern tech world.
That's totally fair. I guess two quick points that I want to make. First is that back to the same sort of point that you're making, Ghost, is we have a real credibility gap now. Now basically it's up for anybody who we all get our news from. I could say, Breitbart is terrible. They don't say anything truthful, and then you would hit me back with, Democracy Now! Actually, they're super left leaning and blah blah blah. And that's partially where we are right now.
I haven't seen enough Democracy Now! To question how what their credibility is.
I would say they're pretty. I would say they just pretty much report their headlines are not super leaning. They just kind of say what's happening. I think they're pretty objective, but that's my point. Is it's kind of there isn't a set known. We all kind of know the Huffington Post leans left, but plenty of people read the Huffington Post like it's a completely legitimate organization, and exactly, and it's just depending on your position. And two, I think this really does exist because we've made news is about clicks, and news is about entertainment now. News is about, you have 24 hours of content to fill. And as if you see with like ESPN, like the shows that they have on at 2 a.m, if it's not just a super Sports Center reruns or just random shows, things, replays of things, they have shows on all day, and it's just content. Half of it's garbage, half of it's good, but half of it's garbage. And I think when you look at like CNN just really doesn't have the ability to be competent on issues that really matter because they're really more concerned about selling ad time. They're more concerned about these things. And I think we drifted away as a society from having a 6 o'clock news where you go and this company doesn't make a profit off of the news. They just simply report the facts, and it's just your duty as a citizen to watch it for an hour, and the news of the world, and that's that. And now it's just so constant. It's, you go on Facebook, you do this and that, and you're right, it is fundamentally
changed.
But yeah, that's what technology has done, though, in a good and bad way. It's allowed information to spread a lot quicker, but to the negative consequence for media is viewership. It's like, why am I going to pay for cable to to watch any of that. Why am I going to pay for the newspaper when I can go on Reddit and half of these people repost stuff and it's all filtered and I can comment on it, then have to go to the LA Times, the New York Times. I just got a subscription to The Economist this last week because one, I always enjoyed it, but their podcasts are phenomenal. It's 8 hours a week or 9 hours a week of podcasting. But my whole point is that the revenue is dying. If I didn't like The Economist so much, like, it's the first time I've subscribed and I have an econ degree. Like I could have used that 4 years ago, 6 years ago, so.
Yeah, I think that's sorry.
It's like, we ask them to do journalism, and it's like, with what money? when all your money is being lost to bloggers, YouTube, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, because that's where people are turning to. I know a lot of folks who are like, oh, I saw a John Oliver report. It's like, John Oliver does a great job talking about facts, but he makes fun of it.
Yeah, he's ultimately a comedian. He's not a journalist.
Yeah, and he's telling you enough to inform you. Yeah, but just to make you like a laughable highlight, a part of it. Like he could go on and on and on, and he's very, very smart about stuff.
Well, and
again,
yeah,
I was just saying.
I mentioned John Oliver a lot of times. He's just producing propaganda sometimes. I mean, okay, so he will take the most critical views of anything that disagrees with his beliefs. Like he will absolutely analyze, slice and dice them. But when it comes to things that question what he believes in his policies, he will take the simplest or most advantageous views of those policies. And that's my issue with him. I'm not asking him to give a complete, absolute 100% fair shake to everything. I just wish he was.
Well, it's hard to fit all that into a 30-minute show.
No, I know,
but also at the same point, that's comedy. That's not. He's made that point over and over and over again, and he knows that.
Yes. Jon
Stewart never wanted to be the primary news source of his demographic. But it just ended up that way.
But I'm sorry. Like each Comedy Central should not be the main source of news anchor broadcasters. Like that when you say that sentence and you have the likes of all of the other mainstream news outlets, and you're like, oh, so who produces, who has the best broadcasters?
Trevor Noah's doing a good job to keep them from keeping that title. He's doing an excellent job of turning young people off his show.
I like, dude. Trevor Noah's interviews are great. Maybe I don't know his show, but he's a very smart man. But back to the point to go back to original media is that people, a lot of young folks who have access to technology are looking towards getting. I can read on Reddit the 15 headliners in the 4 places, 4 topics I like or 5 topics I like. Watch my 2 comedy sessions and feel that I'm informed. And yeah, to some degree I am, but that's not to the deep, the breadth and depth that there used to be. The long articles, the months and months of follow up. That old media firms were able to pay for. So it's like, who's paying for this? Yeah, you could have a dedicated blogger, but they are giving up a lot. The same cost that the old media was. So that's what I'm saying is like, how do we have the same level of journalism with the lack of resources?
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think one more issue too is ultimately, I don't remember if you guys have ever looked at like standardized, just kind of like the core things you're supposed to learn from high school or college or whatever. I know at Stephen, at our college, one of the big things was being a critical thinker. That was so important, being able to critically think. And I think that's really lacking. I think that people just take surface articles, and I'm obviously sometimes I can be guilty of this as well. We all certainly can be, but sometimes we just take a headline and run with it. And I think we need to learn how to be more discerning as a society and realize, I'm getting this source from this page. Like maybe I shouldn't just retweet it right away without reading it and understanding the context of who's writing it and all of that stuff. Because obviously the way all the things that you guys mentioned certainly makes me believe that the way we used to report news is just no longer. I don't see how it recovers, if you will. I don't see how newspapers all of a sudden become prominent again. So obviously this is the new sort of frontier. But how do we get it so that we can understand, oh, this blogger is credible, this blogger is not? How can we set some sort of a norm as a society where, okay, this person is generally, because I mean, you can say what you want about Jon Stewart, but most people viewed him as generally, yeah, he had his left leanings, but he was generally a voice of reason, if you will.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. I used to enjoy Jon Stewart a lot, and yes, he was always biased, but I thought he did a much better job than John Oliver could ever dream to do. And Trevor Noah doesn't even deserve to be in that chair, if you ask me, because he's just so unfunny.
Well, having to live up.
How they chose him, because he's just so not funny.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched it very often since then. When Jon Stewart left, it kind of did it for me, and I don't necessarily think that's negative on Trevor Noah. I think it's just that's like, unless you're Aaron Rodgers, it's really hard to replace Brett Favre.
No, I don't. He lacked his tenor, the way he discusses issues. There's something completely missing. He doesn't have the spark that Jon Stewart had.
All right, so I think. Yeah, let's kind of get close to wrapping things up here. I think we're going a little over our hour mark. And
do you have any further questions about the Trump administration you would like to?
Well, one final point I just wanted to make, and this isn't necessarily to the Trumpers. I just wanted to speak to the protesters, to people that are being inspired to stand up. And I think there's a lot of positives to take from the Trump administration. People don't seem as apathetic as they used to. I think that there is room for a great civil debate in this country, and I think we could be a better country if both sides obviously remain nonviolent. We don't want people breaking windows. We don't want any of that. Important to be involved, and I think it's a good sign. My one thing to protesters is I want to say is that intersectionality. It's a word you're going to be hearing a lot, and should have been hearing a lot for a while. But that's I want to say that's everything. If you're somebody who subscribes to be a leftist or liberal, or if you're one of those women who marched in the Women's March, like, great, fantastic. But you also need to show up for all the other issues that we need to fight, whether it's Black lives, Muslim lives, gay rights, abortion rights, climate change, corporate greed. The list goes on. Anything like that. If you're really angry about the Trump administration, if you really think that this is not the direction you want your country to go in, obviously he's the president. We lost the election, but there are still things we can do. But the key is that you can't just, if you're a white woman or if you're a white man, you can't just stand up for things that particularly affect you. We're all in this together, and we need to show that unity as a country. And so when you show up for one issue, you got to show up for all of them. So that's just my piece. Keep it peaceful, and let's stand up for what you believe in. And hopefully in 4 years we can win, or if not, hopefully in 8. But just keep fighting, because that's what politics is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be violent. It's not supposed to be vile. Let's do away with calling everybody who's a Trump supporter a racist. But let's actually call them out on their issues. You're okay with Trump supporting this and this. Like, I'm concerned about this. These are all legitimate things. So just keep calling your congressman. And that's what I want to say from my soapbox.
Okay. So let me just start. Okay. So your conversation has convinced me that we're going to get 8 years of Trump, because you've completely missed the point. The reason the Democrats lost is not because they did not yell racist enough at people. It's not because you did not call people names. It's not because you weren't identitarian.
Well, no, but I don't think any of that. I'm saying that is partially the reason we lost. We lost because we didn't organize it.
We lost.
Yeah. Democrats didn't sell their ideals well enough.
You had this great ground game. You had an amazing infrastructure set up with the DNC, but we
had a candidate who nobody liked. We didn't convince. We
had a candidate that nobody liked.
We had a candidate that everybody was like, all right, I'll vote for Hillary because I couldn't vote for Trump. When nobody was excited. You're playing not to lose. We weren't playing to win. It's a classic sports analogy for it.
But here's the thing: when you focus on this identitarian, you're the same reason Occupy Wall Street absolutely failed. It was a complete garbage fire. Because you're focused on that. You're trying to focus on that issue of reforming Wall Street and making it better. And then everyone was just, no, take my pet issue. No, you can't just talk about reforming Wall Street. You have to make my issue a part of your movement. And you just kept consuming all these.
But I agree with you. But like,
But this is why when you say
not,
you're a white man or white woman, because of the color of your skin, you have to look out for other people. When you say that, when you make that a priority, for Muslims who are generally treated great in this country, they're treated great in this country relative to how they are in many other parts of the world. Women are treated the best
still
here.
Still not treated well enough, though.
Of anywhere
I
in
mean,
the
it might be
world. You have black
comparatively, but
people who
there's
are treated
still
the
a lot of
best in
violence against
America.
Muslims.
In America versus other foreign countries, especially the Middle East. Black people
We
are
should
treated
we should
great
compare
in America.
ourselves to the Middle East.
No, we shouldn't hold ourselves to their standard, but they are generally treated great when they follow the law.
Okay. Well, we don't have time to debate that at this.
But this is my point, though. You can't. You're getting so caught up in these issues. You're getting so caught up in these issues. You're just completely devoiding your movement of meaning, and you're conceding. You're conceding all this political ground because you won't just say, "Look, we need to focus on this issue." If you focused on it, doesn't mean you have to abandon the other issue, but to make it so, no. Even if you're part of this, you have to be part of this. You have to be flexible with people.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, if you care about issues like climate change, then why do you not care about issues like corporate greed? Because they're connected. It's basically that they're all connected. Yeah, I agree. You can't obviously have every protester show up to everything, and you use your strengths as you will, but that comes just down to strategic organizing and the people that are in charge and the leadership. But ultimately, I'm just saying, if you cop out, like if you're going to show up to the Women's March, like be prepared to call your congressman. If you're going to show up to the protest at Berkeley, then don't break windows, like be part of the change.
I'm not having a problem with the advocating for issues. My problem is trying to make it about everything.
All these fronts need to be fought. I mean, that's just the reality of it, is that Trump is threatening all of these institutions. It'd be one thing if Trump was just threatening Mexicans. Well, if he ends up increasing the police by even more in these neighborhoods, it's just going to increase the problem. But again, we can break all of that.
Statistically, that more cops will cause more crime.
Well, I mean, not necessarily more crime, but I would be nervous for certain elements of the community. Certainly, I mean, and over militarization of the police is not
be in trouble.
You're against militarizing the police, right? And that's exactly what Trump's going to do.
Well, I mean, I'm generally against.
But you know what a police officer though does. I mean, it sends two messages. One, you can read it as like, oh yeah, you're protecting me, and I feel so much safer. The other is that you don't trust me. So you have to put a police officer on every street corner, or amp up security measures in whatever capacity. So
mistrust is really the root of the problem, anyways. I would say.
I mean. So yeah, I mean, depending on what side of the coin you want to be on, it can be positive or it can be very negative.
I mean, they're supposed to go where the crime is. If there's crime there, it's not an indictment of everyone in the community.
But martial law does not. I'm not saying like you're going to vote martial law.
I'm just saying like having more cops.
Yeah, but just think about it. If you have more cops, obviously you're going to have more arrests because they're just going to be more cops there and more times. Like obviously, if you have a cop on every street corner, you're going to catch more people speeding than if you just have one cop. I mean, that doesn't mean that crime increases. That just means that crime gets caught more. And when you're looking at the black community, that means that more black people get arrested for smoking pot, because that just happens more in black communities than it does in white communities, because there's less police. It's all connected.
When looking at that, this specific thing, it's like, what's the output you're looking for? Is it, reduce crime, or is it better citizens who don't commit crimes? Because there's a very big difference. In my mind, for people who are afraid to, commit crimes, or just, I don't know, understand that the consequences are, greater, versus like citizens who have better opportunities, so they don't even think about it.
Well, I don't buy poverty causes crime argument because of the Great Depression.
I'm not saying anything about poverty. I'm just saying anyone who wants to commit a crime for whatever reason that they want to do it.
We got way off tangent.
Do you want to build a society that allows people to have opportunities where that's not even really like a thought, because there's so many other things. I don't think
that crime is correlated with intelligence insanely, to an insane degree. The idea that we have super genius is insane.
So again, why are you then trying to, if you know that increasing human intelligence is the greatest deterrent to crime, why aren't you doing that instead of?
Because we can't get people to stop beating their kids.
Isn't that ultimately just them getting caught?
I'm sorry, but you can't.
Crimes all the time, but don't get caught. I mean,
this is my point. The way to increase intelligence isn't just better education. You got to have people stop hitting their kids, because that's proven scientifically to take off IQ points.
Right. So
results.
yeah,
but I can't legislate that because for some reason we can't stop people corporally punishing their children. And you look at certain communities, even I think the white communities, like 70% of people beat their kids.
no,
And
but
some of that is like less aggressive than others, but then you go to other immigrant communities and it can go as high as 90%.
We are so off topic right now.
And that would increase intelligence and decrease crime, and I'm sure it would decrease criminal. So I mean that's where I would start. The problem is I know there's no political will to try and deal with that issue.
right. I mean, so now, I mean, that's a completely different, topic to saying what's the
Talk about
appropriate
stopping
policy.
crime. That means
I
improving
know.
intelligence.
But okay, but yeah, so theoretically, yes, I agree with you. Realistically, yeah. I mean, it's not going to be a topic, something that's going to change. So yeah, I see this as like a quick solution. But again, when you look at when you start to question it, it's like the real solution is over in a different area.
It is. The problem is, at the end of the day, people want to be safe. They don't care as long as their kids can live and grow up happily. Yes, maybe they don't like the what it implies to have extra police presence in their neighborhood. But you'll never tell that to someone who loses their kid to crime or just someone speeding. You're never going to have anyone be mad at someone giving a speeding ticket if like their kid gets hit because someone was speeding or if they get in a horrible car accident with someone drunk driving. No one's going to be mad at a DUI being given if they suffer the consequences.
But I mean, I look at
these in a lot of broader context too, as well.
I mean, when you think about these communities, then if you stop all criminal activity or you make black market, I don't want to say stop all, but you severely bottleneck the black market activity and decrease the revenue coming into those communities that is already extremely low. Yeah, you might save some lives, but what if poverty is taking the rest?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, most people are drug dealers and criminals because they're poor. It's like it's not someone who's financially stable isn't going to go out and try to rob a bank or hold up a liquor store or something. Obviously, you commit crimes because you have to. You feel like it's your only choice. I mean, that's why people join gangs because they don't have anywhere else to turn. Ultimately, poverty, while you can not necessarily say it's the specific reason, it is certainly a factor.
Oh, of course it's a factor. Of course. And this is why I push for legalization of prostitution and drugs, because I want to take away their avenues for revenue.
That would go quite a long way to fixing a lot of these problems.
Here's the problem. I know where this would end. Don't get me wrong, I'm still all for legalization, but I know the one frontier that's going to be their last stand if we went the full libertarian route of legalizing all these different activities and substances is it would be child prostitution is where that would be their final stand for making money.
Yeah, and that's obviously horrible and terrible.
That we should never be accepting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got plenty off topic on that. Steven, do you have any final points you want to make? Because I think we're reaching over. We should probably sign off.
Man, the final points is through all the politics with all the sports is who's finally gonna what leadership in any category is going to be able to demonstrate trust and have the American people believing that their actions are beneficial for us, or just even true to what they say and what they do. So that's something that I can continue to look for. I mean, and as far as Donald Trump, we could have spent an hour just listing the things that he's done. So staying on top of it is so incredibly important. San Francisco is the first city to sue Donald Trump over the immigration executive order, as a lot of people dub it, the Muslim ban, which they are saying is unconstitutional as it infringes on the 10th Amendment, which is the local and states' right to govern its residents
the government has the right to legislate immigration. That's what they did in 1965 when they passed the federal immigration law change permanently to permanently alter the consistency of immigrants going into this country. So yes, the federal government, it's not a 10th Amendment issue because the federal government has the right to regulate regulation. It is not delegated to the states. The states cannot say, I don't want to follow federal law because that power has been delegated to the federal government and not delegated to the states.
So I mean, not to get into the argument that's hopefully going to be played out in the courts, but why I like it, one, because San Francisco doesn't agree with the policy for many reasons, and two, I think they're taking the right avenue in doing it. It's like, because if you don't agree with them, San Francisco could easily just put out a tweet saying police officers, people of the law, do not obey this. Thanks, have a good one. But no, they right. Instead,
So just like those protesters in Berkeley, you know what? They should burn things down because they don't agree with it. So we're gonna break things and we're gonna violate the law. That's
right.
That's not the answer, obviously.
It could have gone real hectic, and they could, San Francisco, there are many negative options, but they took the very appropriate one and laid out the case of
there is no case for 10th Amendment.
Let the courts decide before we.
Okay, so my whole point is that they've openly aired their disagreements, publicly, and so when it's finally enforced, they want to have it challenged to every last bit, and and if it does become law, then how the city reacts is going to be very interesting. If they actually enforce it if that happens. But what I'm saying is that this is okay. This is okay to if you disagree, challenge it and do it in the proper channels. And this is what I'm going at. Like they're trying to do it in the proper channels. So to me, that's interesting, because in a lot of ways, doing things through executive order has caused an incredible amount of trouble for this specific issue. Well, I mean, a lot of issues, like agencies don't know how to take it. A lot of mixed messages. Multiple courts have struck down or upheld certain parts, conflicting parts. So to say that it's a whole sound policy, it's like, hey, no, we want a judge, someone to say the legislative branch should finally have the last word on it before we do something. And I think that's
political theater.
I think that's
that's a virtue signal is what it really is. And what they're going to do is find courts that have liberal appointed judges who will not decide the case based on the constitutionality or the legality of the law, but decide it based on their politics rather than based on what the law of the land is. I mean, that's what this is going to devolve to, and you know that. You and I both know that.
But then it goes to the Supreme Court, and then you have to look at.
Then you have to have enough people who will agree with it on the court. I mean, this is the problem with it. Basically, you're just going to keep finding a venue that agrees with you.
That's checks and balances. That's the society that we.
I agree that the importance of the courts. But the problem is that the process this is going to go through, a law that is completely legal and absolutely has been confirmed by the court several times, is now going to be challenged yet again because it's a different person putting it into action.
But I think the broader point is about executive orders. As people complain so much about Obama, who obviously didn't do as many executive orders as Bush, but anyways, people still complained about Obama doing executive orders, and here we have 20 executive orders in 10 days.
And obviously, the matter of quantity. It was the matter of what the executive orders did. For example, DACA, which sought to fundamentally undermine and change the immigration policy of this land without an actual appropriate public debate.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, ruling with executive orders, like, we're supposed to have a Congress. Like, Congress is supposed to pass laws, the president is supposed to enforce it. A lot of this people are uneasy because it seems like a president is taking wide brushstrokes with the pen and legislating on things that are obviously more complicated than that. And I think we've seen a lot of these problems with like NBA players, for example, who aren't able to get on planes because they're not an American citizen and they don't know if they'll be detained at another airport. I mean, these are just one of the. Obviously, they're not the most people that we should be worried about the most.
Sorry, they're so oppressed to be paid millions of dollars. But yes, I see your point. There are unintended consequences, but they've confirmed that green card holders are legal U.S. citizens and therefore not.
Yeah, but then why were they detained?
It was the rollout by the Department of Homeland Security was the problem.
Would this argument even be happening if Congress approved it? If Congress made it a law and it went through the proper channels.
Oh, absolutely. This argument would be happening if Congress approved it.
It would be happening, but it would still be much more law. It wouldn't be the.
There'd be no confusion though. And to me, that's
there'd be intentional confusion, and there would definitely be a massive.
But intentional confusion is one thing versus an actual. We know what the letter of the law is. It's different if it's. To Stephen's point, it's different if we know it from an institutional level. It's different. Then you can sue it. Then you can do it. Then it's through actual channels, and it's going back to our original point about legitimacy and credibility. I mean, there's a certain way that things are supposed to be done in this country, and it's supposed to be done through Congress. And he has a Republican majority, so he should be ruling through that way. He should be getting Republicans on his side and doing these things through the proper channels, not just doing constant executive orders and then we wouldn't have these unintended
Okay. Well, on the executive orders, I mean, he just gave he gave poor people in this country the largest tax cut in American history.
Yeah, and that's going to have a lot of unintended consequences as
He gave
well.
Obamacare relief. I mean, he just gave the poor the biggest tax cut in America.
Also, a lot of unintended consequences. Not well thought out, I would say. But again, we can touch it. We'll see how this all evolves in the next few weeks. Ghost, do you have any final points you want to make?
I want to say, President Trump, I know you're not listening. I want to say thank you for keeping your promises. And I understand that you're like President Trump is kind of like your dad. You know, occasionally he'll say things that probably will embarrass you. You know, he's not. He's sometimes he's a bit crass, a bit crude, but at the end of the day, he's looking out for your best interests, and he's doing whatever he can and using whatever is within his power to give you the best possible opportunity he can. And that's how I view it. And I think with the promises he's kept and the job he's done so far, I'm very happy. I feel like my vote has been vindicated. And it's been a great start, and I hope we can keep going for the next 8 years.
And well, obviously I disagree with your assessment, but we'll leave it at that. That this has been a very informative and exciting debate. I think we've all demonstrated how you can have a civil discussion with somebody you vehemently disagree with and have it not erupt into name calling and all of that. Obviously, not that many people listen to us, but if you are listening, this is how we need to learn how to communicate as a people. Again, as I always say, if you're offended by something that my co-hosts or one of my co-hosts said, or something that I said, that's not our problem. You're responsible for looking up why we're wrong and explaining it to us. And please comment on our page if you disagree about something. That is political discourse. That is what is supposed to happen. It is okay to disagree, but let's also, again, to make sure that we treat each other with respect. And understand that ultimately we all want what's best for the country. We might disagree on how to get there, but we don't need to resort to name calling to win the argument. And that's true for both sides. So with that, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you to our listeners for listening. Again, make sure to check us out on social media and on and at wordpress.com/diplomasports, and leave us comments, and please share and tag and like and all that fun stuff. And let's get the movement going. So thank you and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you again for the discussion. Great to talk to you again, SC and Steve. And I hope you guys have a good night as well.
Always a pleasure, you guys. Buenas noches.